Hey guys, still here and welcome back to Steel Division. What I have for you today is a gameplay of the breakthrough mode. Now before we're going to get into the gameplay, I first need to show you something that is important for the breakthrough mode. And that's defense that you have down here. If you're coming from Brendryen, you might be expecting the naval tab down here, but we don't have that here in Steel Division. We have a defense tab. And depending on the type of deck that you're using, and that is this rating that you see top left side over here, this says A, B, or C. A decks generally have fewer defense slots, B have so and so, and C has more defense slots, since they're more defensively oriented decks. Now in these defense slots, you can add all sorts of additional, defensive structures or defensive buildings. I've opted in this deck for trenches, bunker maxim, the bunker PTRD-41 with an anti-tank rifle, and finally the bunker AT-45. And you can see that these things also come with their own sort of terraneous features, so they nicely blend in with the terrain. And they definitely blend in with the terrain because they have very good stealth on a bunker. Their speed is percentage 1 km per hour, which for a bunker I think is still pretty fast. I mean, a bunker moving at 1 km per hour? No, these things are completely still. They don't move whatsoever. And you can only place them at the start of the battle. Now, as mentioned, if you have a different deck, you're going to have different slots available. If I pick my 5th Panzer, I only have 4 slots. And if I have my 14th Infantry, I have 6 slots. So it's really going to come down to what sort of deck you're operating and what sort of defensive structures you're going to be needing. Now, with that, let's get into the replay. Alright, here's the replay. The breakthrough mode is something that is completely new in Steel Division 2. I have not really seen anything similar in any other game that I've played. Now, in Steel Division 2, the breakthrough mode is a battle mode where, as the title indicates, one side has to break through. It's a conquest mode, but it's a sort of slanted conquest mode, in the sense that the defending team starts with all the capture points under their control, and the attacking team only starts with this very narrow strip of terrain that you can see here. And with that narrow stretch of terrain, that's where they can deploy their units, and their objective is to capture as many of these capture points as quickly as possible, and then start to generate points. If they don't do that fast enough, then the defending team gets an advantage, and just as in Conquest, the team which gets the most points in the shortest period of time wins the game. I'm playing here together with Mr. Jaeger and against 2 medium AIs. We're going to be discussing quite a bit of time what sort of defensive structures go where. At least that's what happened on stream while we were doing this game live. And there is quite a bit of thinking that you can get into this. As with Steel Division is usually the case, high ground definitely has preference over low ground. This hill, and you can sort of make it out if I zoom in a bit more, this hill has a quite dominating view over the surrounding area. And at the moment I have set the game to neutral so you can see where the enemy spawns, but at the time we didn't know, so all we saw was this. Now you can see there's a road down here on the right side, there's a road over here on the left side, and there is a sort of road-ish, one here and one here. You don't know what road the enemy is going to come down, and this is of course part of the challenge. Where do you stack your defenses? How much terrain do you want to give up, and what are your fallback positions going to be? One thing that is very handy in Steel Division 2, as it is in Steel Division 1, is the view range icon. If you hold C, you can see what a unit from that position can see, and you also get ranging circles, so you know how far that unit is likely to be able to fire, depending of course on what type of unit that you have. Now, I was going to be defending the right flank, Mr. Jaeger is going to be doing the same thing for the left, and we're going to be using this hill as well, because, as I have indicated in previous videos as well, line of sight on this game is quite different from Brendryen, in the sense that a unit that is up here, let's say normally you're fighting down from over here, you'd be looking at an area zoomed in like this. You'd be able to see this, and that's what you focus on. Now you need to be zoomed out a little further, because a unit that stands over here can hit all the way to the edge of this tree line. And I'm going to be using that in this particular gameplay. Because if you have an assault gun, a very heavy anti-infantry gun, mounted or parked somewhere on this tree line, then you can see that you can suppress quite a lot. And units which are coming down here, mostly infantry units, which are trying to take over this town from me, will get hammered by the the SU-152 that I'm going to be deploying here. Now there is quite a bit of deployment, and we took a very long time to figure out how we were going to defend this place. So the gameplay timer might say it's 42 minutes, but I think we have a solid 10, maybe 15 minutes even, that we're working on deploying our defenses. And the thing that you can do in this deployment phase is deploy the bunkers. Now let's skip up a little bit and wait for one of those bunkers to get deployed. I think, yep, there's one. This is an 45mm anti-tank gun mounted in a bunker. Let me hide the... Yeah, it's in the deployment phase, so it's not solid yet, but that looks really nice. And of course it shouldn't be blinking white. I'll revisit this particular section when the game actually starts. But this is how it works. I positioned this bunker over here so it can cover the road. And this thing can see, again, pretty damn far, so it should be able to cover the whole road without it immediately being detected because of its very good stealth value. Also, over there is a dozer that's, if I'm correct, a reconnaissance unit. But then again, I'm still very much learning what units do what. I'm also going to be defending this town because it is a capture point. This town is important. It's a capture point, so I have some infantry over here. And I'm going to be deploying some additional bunkers over here. Here's the first one. This is a recoilless rifle bunker. It had, an anti-tank rifle, which I think is the same thing. Their penetration is far lower at 35mm. However, that's exactly what I want for this particular position. Because what I know is going to happen is that the AI will charge down this road with vehicles which contain infantry. If I can knock that thing down with this recoilless rifle, I can then take out the infantry much easier. And the infantry in here is going to be waiting for them. Aftermachiki and a second squad of Aftermachiki. So with this thing in place, you get a sort of an ambush position. And I'm going to be doing the same thing on the other end. This bunker Maxim is a machine gun bunker. And anything that comes down this road is going to get hit by another recoilless rifle. And then the machine gun. So again, you create a sort of overlapping field of fire. First an autocannon, or not so much an autocannon, recoilless rifle. And then a infantry or anti-infantry bunker to finish off stuff that manages to survive. Because keep in mind, the recoilless rifle, or the anti-tank rifle, only fires AP rounds and cannot actually do anything against infantry. And this is something that you will have to really keep an eye on. Because if you deploy the wrong type of bunker, then you're going to find that it's going to get overwhelmed by infantry. Or vehicles, if you only deploy a Maxim. Which you're going to see me do in a while. Now I also have an SG-43 parked over here on this hill. This is a machine gun. And I have those deployed in or near the trench. This is another defensive structure that you can position. I'm still trying to figure out exactly how these things work. Do they work both ways? Do they only use for infantry squads? Because it seemed like the machine gun that came out of this truck just didn't really use this trench at all. Now this is not the only defensive structure that you can build. Let's see if I can find it at some point. Because Mr. Jaeger also had barbed wire in his deck. And with that you can create positions that are far more difficult to pass for infantry. How exactly armored vehicles are going to be interacting with the barbed wire, I can't tell you yet, because I haven't had any experience with that yet. So if you know about that, then please let me know down below in the comments. Now overall, I'm spreading out my defenses pretty wide. I have an SU-152 over here, as mentioned previous. This is going to be defending from a pretty high ground position, and can also help out with infantry units which have already been destroyed, or at least their transports have been destroyed by the bunker. And then, when the infantry is out in the open, the 152 takes out any survivors. This is a really neat position for this gun. I also have a 1943 T-34-85 over here. And this thing is more set up so that if this whole town falls, this tank can either defend this particular stretch of road, or I can have it move up, and from over here, it can still engage units as they're coming down the road. And again, this icon, the viewfinder, also known as the, I'd say, the C tool, because you press C to use it, is very, very handy in this game mode. Defensive site over here contains the bunker, an anti-tank gun, a Comrati leader, and a PTRS-41. This is another anti-tank weapon. It's just the mobile version of the bunker that I have deployed over here, the PTRD-41. Over on the left, we have Mr. Jaeger. He's going to be defending this place, and you can see that he has a trench set up around this around this town over here. That is, if you want to call it a town. That might be a bit of a stretch. It's basically 7 buildings together, and, and that's what we call a town nowadays. He also has a Bunker 45 AT. Let's see what lines of sight for this thing is. Yep, again, you can see it's coming, or it's going to fire at whatever comes down this road, and then loses line of sight as the units pass through this tree line, or pass by this tree line. And then when they come out over here, it again can fire at those units. Also an Su-85, a snipery, which is a reconnaissance team, and some additional infantry units set up in a sort of ambush position with, if I'm not mistaken, mortars. Although at the moment I can only see what sort of transports they're coming in with. Alright, let's progress all the way up to the point where the AI actually unleashes hell on us. Important to know, if you're playing this game mode, is what sort of deployment type the enemy is using. Because this will indicate what sort of defenses you need and when. And by deployment type, I mean when are they going to get the most points. For my deck, it's most points in Phase C, with Phase A being pretty high, 150, Phase B a little lower. Mr. Jaeger is the opposite. He has least points coming in Phase A, medium in Phase B, and a load in Phase C. And both AIs are set up to have most points in Phase B. So Phase A, we might not even see that many units. But Phase B is where it's going to be really happening. Now the game is acting a little wonky over here. Possibly because I put it on 10 times speed. See, these units are moving way, way, way too fast. I was hoping that this is a bug that got sorted out with this game, but apparently not so much. Why the hell is this thing still operating this fast? I'm at 0.20 speed, and you can see that time is ticking by very, very quickly. I think the game still has to sort of synchronize. Now you can see that my defensive bunkers at the moment are starting to engage the 39M Sabas, which are armored reconnaissance vehicles, Hungarian built. And they're already taking quite a bit of fire, not so much only from these things, but I think there might be artillery further in the back, which is making my life quite difficult. Alright, let's see if I can speed up the timer slowly without breaking the replay system again. I'm going to have to report this to Eugen, because this is something that is going to be quite annoying as you're doing replays. Now at the moment, we have 22 of the capture points, they have 2. But that does not mean that the AI is done. They still have 30 minutes left to make a change, to try and get more terrain covered. And they're definitely going to be doing so. The replay as a whole is going to last another 22 minutes, so there is still quite a lot of features to cover. Now I had a defensive setup over here. Unfortunately, I neglected to put my machine gun actually inside the building, which might actually have saved their lives, because at the moment it seems that the AI doesn't even know where they are. Over here, my Su-152 is looking to do work, but doesn't quite have range on anything just yet. We also have a Bunker 45, which is currently engaging what I think at maximum range is going to be these T-34 and armored reconnaissance units that we have over here. And my other bunker, Maxim, this is a machine gun. It's been detected, I think, taken some damage, and is utterly incapable of firing back at whatever's firing at it because it's a machine gun. This thing is mostly here, so that if there is enemy infantry looking to get a position on this town, I can counter it with these bunkers. But overall, they're pretty poorly positioned. I still really have a lot to learn about where I position my units and how I exactly use those defensive structures. Now, I lose my town over here, and you can already see that the AI just captured 5 points. Major defeat in 28 minutes, but it's no longer a total defeat. We still hold 18, but now they have 6. And they're going to keep pushing and gathering more and more terrain. They already captured this town, and you can see that as of now, they're not quite pushing on this town yet, but that might change, although it is a little bit out of the ways. You could argue that this town is more interesting for them to capture, as it has 2 capture points. And then it's an easy stretch to get this one, and all of a sudden they have 9 and we only have 15. So we're trying to balance things out a little. The Su-152 is firing. Again, the game really looks pretty. I really like the way it looks. The Su-152 can only fire HE rounds. Doesn't mean they're not effective. Because even if you are in on a vehicle which has some armor, you get hit by a 7 HE round, you can bet your ass that it's not going to be pleasant for the tank crew. It might not damage their vehicle that much, but they will take morale damage. And that, in this game, can be just as important as breaking a vehicle. Because if you can push the enemy back, then that gives you a bit more time to bring in more units. And, of course, to try to recover your own units insofar as they have been damaged. Now, over here I'm going to run into trouble in a bit. Because, as you can see, these bunkers are all firing outwards. And there is nothing that is covering this particular stretch of terrain between the bunkers. And that's something that these Jaeger have figured out. Or at least the AI seems to be aware of it. So what you're going to see happening here, and let this be a lesson, you need to be covering the bunker's rear. I didn't do that. And these bunkers are utterly defenseless against the units as they're coming into their stern. So make sure that, for example, you put a machine gun over here, and any infantry that comes out of these tree lines is immediately going to get hit by a machine gun. I didn't, and that is going to cost me quite a bit of damage that these bunkers could have put out. For the moment, I also have 2 T-34-85s at the road over here. They can sort of see stretches of the road. This one not so much, this one quite a bit more. Especially the line of approach for these units. So these 2 units are definitely taking fire. Gun jammed on the 39M. Front one has an incendiary and then gets taken out. Now at the moment you can see that the Jaeger are engaging the bunker. And there is just nothing that this bunker can do against it. It's only an anti-tank weapon. And the Jaeger are just, well, pushing on it. And I'm only now realizing my mistake, I think. I should have countered this a whole lot better. And I'm just not doing it. So far, I've been able to hold the AI at bay pretty nicely. I was expecting much more of an assault down this road. But for some reason or another, the AI is not doing that. They do know where my bunkers are at this point. Or at least, they probably have a vague idea. And you can already see that already is raining down on these things. And bunker or not, they definitely don't like being rained upon by this. So for the moment, I'm just going to have to try and hold with these 45mm bunkers. And as long as they're just bringing in cheap transports, I can do that. There you go. That's another transport destroyed. Over on the left, the battle was going far less well overall. They captured this building over here. They are getting dangerously close to pushing on this town. Although for the moment it is being held by the Guardia. And you can see that these guys are in fact in a trench. I like the way that this looks. Look at that. Can we see the enemy infantry? Yep, they're running through the edge of the woods here. Running for their lives, these guys. And if you look back at that position, you can still see the sandbags from that trench. You can see a couple of what I think might be dead German troops. Although, I don't really know. They could be Russians. But this is anyway how these trenches work. And they're putting up a lot of fire, these guys. So that the Rona Schützen which are coming in just don't stand a chance. Very effective defensive position here by Mr. Jaeger. Very well done. Of course, when you have an enemy armored vehicle, I don't know how well this is going to hold. That's something that I'm going to have to try out in some sort of later video. Now, let me try and find if we have any, because we deployed barbed wire at some point. But I'm just not sure where. There was so much terrain to defend that I'm not really sure where we had that barbed wire. All I can tell you is that at some point we did have it. And it is also something that you're going to have to coordinate with your teammate. Because I, for one, in this position, could have really used barbed wire. This barbed wire, or a barbed wire line over here between these bunkers, would have made sure that infantry couldn't just pass behind the bunkers and get into these houses, for example. So, if you are in command of a lot of bunkers, and your allies have, for example, more trenches than you have, or have the capability of deploying barbed wire, then make sure you work with them. And make sure that they actually deploy the stuff that you need. So again, text markers, or better yet, voice comm is going to be very important. And once again, highlighting this. They are being engaged, kind of. But I'm not really sure from where. Is this MG42 really hitting that? Yes, they are. Okay. Once again, long ranges in this game. This MG42 has a range of 1500 meters and is engaging the infantry that's coming out of this tree line between the bunkers. So they're forcing them back into cover. But by doing so, they're giving their own position away and immediately getting hammered by the units which are still capable of firing, and they are not likely to survive for very long. It's just an unarmed, or well, unarmored machine gun 42 squad. Unfortunately for us, the enemy also captured this town, which is another capture point. And now they're suffering a minor defeat in 22 minutes. To make matters worse, we're now in Phase B. And Phase B means that the AI can now deploy a lot more stuff. My defensive line over here is still being tested, but so far is holding the line. My bunker is still operational, still has 391 rounds left. Of its initial 400, so it hasn't really gotten an opportunity to fire a whole lot. But now it is. And I think it just murdered another transport over here. And this is exactly what I had these things for. I wanted to make sure that units got down this road in their transports and then got taken out. So that the infantry is now out in the open, where it is walking into the receiving arms of a T-34-85 1943. So they really don't have too many places to go. I also deployed an SG-43, so a machine gun. Unfortunately, not quite the right building for them. Because from over where they are, they can't see that much. They can't see that tree line. If I put them over here, they should be able to see a whole lot more. So I'm relocating the SG-43 towards this church, I guess. Now, fortunately, the Jaeger are falling back, which does allow my bunkers to survive. But again, that's no thanks to me, that's thanks to this machine gun 42. I also deployed 2 more T-34-76s on the hill over here, because I know that there's quite a few armored units moving down this road, or this open field. And if they're moving west, I can shoot them in their flanks. Unfortunately, I neglected to put reconnaissance here. I just didn't think to put any. And I was micromanaging this part, I was looking at this side over here. Also trying to figure out what my units over here should be doing, because I also deployed a couple of tanks over here to assist Jaeger. And with all that going on, I completely forgot recon. I know that I always keep yammering on about you need more recon in Red Dragon. But in this game, I'm trying to get my bearings. Another T-34-85, this time further in the back, with a leader boosting the effectiveness of both tanks. And at the moment, I'm trying to keep a Tiger E at bay. The Tiger E doesn't take any shit from this T-34-85 and immediately proceeds to kill it off. And that is when we get into a bit of trouble, as two T-34-85s, or sorry, 76s, which only have a penetration of 100 millimeters, are firing at a Tiger, which has a frontal armor of 125. One of these tanks manages to knock out their driver, but aside from that, they're not really going to be that effective against the Tiger E. It just has too much armor. At some point, we're going to try and fly in some aircraft against this Tiger in order to at least stun it or try to keep it at bay. But for the moment, there's not a whole lot that these T-34-76s can do, and they just have to fall back. Try to get out of the murderous fire that's being put up by that Tiger E over there. The right flank is still holding, but it is definitely being pushed. We have more Jaeger coming in. A group of Kosaken over on the right. And I should have moved up some of these units a bit further. This bunker was going through its AP shells pretty quick. And is currently being resupplied by a Studebaker logistics unit. I just want to keep this gun firing as long as possible. And again, we're taking aim. Looking towards, I think, an Opel Blitz, and immediately takes out the Opel Blitz. Potentially wiping out some infantry inside as well, but, well, you never quite know about that. And there's another one. These things fire pretty damn quick. Ready to fire 12 rounds a minute, and that's an anti-tank gun that can penetrate 100 millimeters of armor. Something else that you can try to do with these things, if you're looking at a Tiger, for example, I know that I cannot penetrate a Tiger at max range. Because as it says here in the tooltip, indicates the ammo's maximum armor-piercing value at close range. The higher the AP value is in contrast with that of the armor, the greater the chance to penetrate. Remember, each time you close on the target by 100 meters, the AP increases by +1. Armor-piercing rounds are useless against infantry units. So this thing cannot fire at infantry, and you can see that the infantry is happily firing at it, but is just sitting there dumbfounded and cannot do anything in return. But the moment that a vehicle appears, it immediately fires at that. So, if you have something along the lines of a Tiger coming to attack you, then if I had deployed a bunker over here, and waited for that Tiger to get closer, or maybe even here would have been better, I might have been able to actually kill that Tiger with something as easy as a 45. You don't always need the very big guns. Generally they can help, but the closer you get, just the more damaging the rounds become. Two SG-43s in these buildings are trying to keep infantry at bay, but again, infantry is not a problem. Enemy armor is a problem, and that Tiger E is still out there. Now he had it panicked at some point, and unfortunately that didn't last long. This is a leader after all, so they are more likely to recover from morale damage faster, thanks to that promotion that they get from being a leader. And at the moment the AI is definitely making work of our left flank. We are losing two buildings over here. The AI is falling back, but they still have some other squads which don't seem to be panicked at all. So if we can take out these guys quickly, that would help. And we did recapture this position. That's thanks to Mr. Jaeger's Partizani. But this building, not so much. The AI is still suffering a minor defeat in 16 minutes. The game's not over yet. Phase B is going to last another 2 minutes and 40 seconds. And that's when Phase C is going to come in. If we can make it to Phase C, that would be very helpful, because that's when Mr. Jaeger, with his 255 division income, is going to be able to deploy almost everything he has left. Which, of course, with the availability bonuses in Phase C, is going to be a hell of a lot of stuff. Now, Mr. Jaeger, far more than myself, is making good use of artillery. I think that was the BM-824, which was firing at the infantry over here, and you can see that some of these guys immediately proceeded to surrender. There's unfortunately another Tiger E over here. And once again, we have no real answer to taking out one of those, well, I'm not sure it's a super heavy, but it's definitely a heavy tank. Another Tiger E, and the Tiger E leader is still over here. And I'm getting a bit worried, because I don't really have anything that can counter that. Another 76 is moving up to the line. But really, a T-34 76 at this range against a Tiger. Make that 2 Tigers and supporting tanks. Its chances are not great. I also have a 76mm gun. This thing has a penetration of 135, which is enough to go through the Tiger E's frontal armor, if it can get shots at it. At the moment, it's not quite engaging this Tiger, but it seems to be working on this one. And again, it looks really, really nice. Let's see where those rounds are going. I think the Tiger E. Tiger E is immediately firing back at the 76. And I should have fired more artillery at this position just to keep stunning them. Try to get them stun locked, and then I can take them out with the anti-tank gun. That is, insofar as the anti-tank gun will survive the whole battle. And that's a big if. These things are not known for their longevity. Anyway, at the start of the video I mentioned that I was going to revisit this bunker, so you know what it looks like. Here's the bunker. Let me hide the HUD. I think that looks really nice. You have this defensive setup, trench, bunker, anti-tank gun, correction. I think that's a destroyed anti-tank gun. Yep, that's a destroyed anti-tank gun. The bunker's still there, but this anti-tank gun on the side is dead. And the infantry in here are spotters. So they have exceptional stealth and very good optics. So with that, I'm spotting everything that comes down the road. And if there is an enemy armored unit that somehow manages to get too close, I can still try and take it out with the PTRS-41, which is basically a recoilless rifle. Just an anti-tank team, or an anti-tank rifle. Alright, 6 minutes left. If we can hold the line, then we should be able to win. They are going to suffer a minor defeat in 14 minutes. And this is when the AI starts to deploy their own rocket infantry, stunning enemy units for them. Jaeger's on the receiving end of it this time. And in the meanwhile, the Axis forces have pushed up, taken over both of these towns, and all of a sudden we're 12-12. Because they're also making very good progress over here. They've taken out all of the towns. There's a lot of infantry in here. There's a Tiger E in support, a Panzer 35R in support. There's an IG 290 infantry gun, which is going to make life on our infantry very hard. All of a sudden, it's not looking that well. One thing that we have going for us is that Mr. Jaeger now has his 255 and I have my 165 income. Whereas the enemy has a 170, which is down a little bit from the 210 that they had in Phase B. I send in a TU-2S, which is a heavy bomber, just to try and stun lock the vehicles over here. It's not quite a carpet bomber, it drops 4 bombs, but it does stun these units for a bit. It makes them so worried that they have to start falling back. Unfortunately at this point, my anti-tank gun, which now has a clean shot into most of these side armors, is completely panicked. Now it's back to shaken, but its accuracy is going to be negligible. So this thing is not going to be that effective. Just at the time when I needed it to be. I have another anti-tank gun over here, and this one is calm. Keeps firing at whatever it can see. And from over here it can see, I think, most of the units. Though it's a bit hard to see exactly what this anti-tank gun has a line of sight on. See, he is firing, but according to the tool, it cannot see that much. I think it can just about see these tanks in the rear, which is actually all that I need them to see. Oh, correction. No, this is an anti-tank gun. I'm a bit confused. I'm also seeing artillery rounds flying overhead. Ah, yes, that would be these two. A couple of 122mm howitzers. That's what I'm using to try and keep this whole group stun locked. It's not going very well. And with the capture of yet another point, it's now 11 for us and 13 for them. And we're looking at a minor defeat in 2 minutes. And the AI just keeps pushing in. There's an Opel Blitz coming in. My bunkers have all been taken out. I have some of the Machiki over here. But at this point I was floating a lot of points and should have spent a lot more earlier on. And I'm starting to really regret that now. Because now you're going to see that without enough units to hold the line, this town is gone, the town on the left is gone. The town over here is still being held, but my defensive line over here is starting to crumble. You can see that the bunker is very much under assault. And the trench is working both ways, apparently. As the German troops are taking cover behind the sandbags over here. Correction, are they German troops? Yes, they are German troops. They're taking cover behind the sandbags, so be careful where you place your trenches, because they can work both ways. And this poor bunker just cannot do anything. All it can do is sit there, keep shooting at enemy armored vehicles, and it's still doing that. Look at this death road over here. That is almost all courtesy of that anti-tank weapon that I had set up in that bunker. Unfortunately, this is when the AI picks a moment to also send in some additional armor, and my bunker is forced to surrender. It's just too much for these guys to hold off. But I'd say they did a very, very good job, considering that everything over here got stopped by that one bunker. The anti-tank weapon next to it died pretty early on. So the bunker definitely did most of the work. Now they captured this point, which means they have 9 versus 15. And we're looking at a minor defeat in 50 seconds. There is a large swarm of no. I'm gonna have to get used to this, guys, I'm sorry. Of Axis forces pushing through. We have Panzer 35s, Tiger E, Panzer T-34, AA guns, I believe. Yep, anti-aircraft gun. There's a Stu 42 coming up. These things are no fun. They are very dangerous against enemy infantry. Pretty much a sort of alternative to what I have in the sense of an ISU or an SU-152. And at the moment the battle is just lost. We could not come back from this. But overall, I think that this is a really, really interesting game mode. The way that you just have to try and keep the enemy at bay. And losing units is not that important, especially for the attacking party. You can just keep throwing stuff at the enemy. If you do it well, then you're going to break through. And that's, of course, is the name of the game. I did get a lot of kills. 2867 versus losses of 1875, so I made positive by 1,000 points. But still, making positive is not the same as winning the battle. It is a version of conquest. You need to hold the line, capture terrain, and make sure that you hold the terrain. Let me know what your thoughts are on this particular game mode down below. I think it can be very, very interesting. It's a nice change of pace when compared to something along the lines of the standard conquest or destruction modes. And I wouldn't be surprised if something like this is also happening in the campaign, which is something that I'm going to be covering soon. Anyway, that's it for now. Let me know what your thoughts are down below in the comments, and I'll see you soon for more videos.